Hello and welcome to Conversations. I'm Jim Below, your host. Very pleased to have joining me today Susan Pollay, the Executive Director for the Downtown Development Authority, the DDA. Welcome back to Conversations.
Thank you. Glad to see you again.
And it's always a pleasure to have you here and sort of update on what both the DDA is doing, but also you might say how the whole downtown area is. First of all, background with the DDA. What geographic region does the Downtown Development Authority sort of not oversee but operate under?
So our district is best described as this odd shape. I don't know how to describe it, but we encompass the South University commercial area, Carytown commercial area, State Street and Main Street commercial areas. So if you think about where you go when you go to Main Street, kind of zigzag around. It was designed by the City Council in the early 80s. And as best as I can understand it, it was meant to contain where the development would take place so that we could safeguard the very important near-in neighborhoods from that development.
And so some of it is also not just the commercial, but also some housing and other aspects of that whole region.
Absolutely. And when I first began counting, it was back in, late 1990s. We estimated there were about 2,000 residents downtown, and there's always been, because of course the university is right in the middle of all this. Our most recent count, we're at 6,500 people living there. So even as the city has not really grown much in number, we gained about 4,000 people downtown in the last decade or so.
And some of that would be university, because especially in the last couple years, you've had some additional apartments and university appeal, you might say, housing, but also some, you say, residential retirement, an attempt to bring in a variety of people into that whole downtown area.
Yeah, exactly. We are getting a little older. There are a lot of people that are empty nesters who have now made downtown their home, and we're getting a little younger. There's quite a few residences for people who are attending university as students. It's kind of an interesting and actually very vibrant mix of people.
And within this region, the DDA oversees this area for what purpose? What are your goals? What is the drive for the Downtown Development Authority?
Well, the mission of the DDA was established in the early 80s. We are here to encourage the private sector to reinvest downtown, and we're here to strengthen the downtown. And the way that we do that is we take several strategies on how to approach that. We're best known for running the public parking system.
Right.
But in fact,
sometimes a positive and a negative way of viewing it.
In our town, parking is everything. But that is a piece of the strategy that we describe as either infrastructure or transportation, because of course parking is part of transportation. We are focused on housing downtown, as we've just been describing. We're there to encourage our public sector partners, such as the county and the city and the library and so forth, to accomplish their goals downtown. We're here to encourage private reinvestment, so we have a strategy around business development. We're also here with a goal that's a very Ann Arbor goal, which is sustainability. We're here to encourage those things that make us a more sustainable community.
In looking at those roles, first with parking, over the 35 years or however long the DDA has been in existence, there have been discussions, arguments about what is the right amount of parking and also how to approach providing that, whether it's surface street lots, or do you limit parking on the street? Do you have, underground, above ground? How is that determined? How do you determine if more parking is necessary in the downtown?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know that we've ever answered it sufficiently, because in many ways it's an eye of the beholder question. Right. For many people, there's too much parking, and we should in fact close up some of those lots and maybe have fewer cars downtown. And when we were underway exploring the underground garage, the one that's next to the library, quite a few people stood up and said, no more parking, in fact we have too much parking, so don't build that garage. Today, even though that garage was built, we have other people saying, no, we don't have nearly enough parking. We need to add more. We've gained, as I said, just 4,000 new residents in addition to a whole lot more businesses and employees. There's more activity downtown, more special events. We need more parking. And in the middle, there's the answer. We are getting stronger with technology to understand the data around it. But in the end, it ends up being a policy choice for our city council, for our DDA members, and in fact for the community to weigh in on.
And part of that is the encouragement for use of mass transit, right. The idea of parking, you could say, off-site and being brought into the downtown, because You have those who work who don't necessarily need access to their vehicle during the day, but also you have the business owners and the commercial people who want to be able to have people park, in a sense, in front of their store to be able to run in and get something and then come back. So as you say, it's a balancing act.
It is, and I'm very grateful to our partners at AAA. The RIDE is an outstanding transit agency, and it makes it feasible for quite a number of our downtown employees to, as you say, park and ride into downtown. In the last few years, we've developed partnerships with Maven and Zipcar. So if they take the transit in, if you need a car to go out to a meeting, you can borrow the car for an hour or so that way. Quite a few of our residents are moving in downtown without a car at all. They're either walking to work or using transit. They may be riding a bike or, again, using the car share. The multimodal approach that our city began to develop many decades ago is coming to fruition now, is we are using relatively fewer numbers of cars, but still that question, do we have enough parking, is still uppermost on people's minds.
I would wonder if with those, as you say, retirement age, those who are moving into the downtown, who may not need access to a vehicle, you could say, all the time, that alternative way of having access to a car or dependability of mass transit becomes, you could say, critical. How does the DDA get involved in, is it a matter of encouraging the AAA TA or encouraging the private sector to meet those demands, or do you as an organization actually work in providing some of that?
Well, we've taken an approach since I've been there of thinking of this as a menu of options, and if we can continually work to develop more and better options, all of us will make a decision based on what's best for us. If it's convenience, we'll make one choice. If price is a factor, we'll make a different choice. And as many options as people have available, they make different choices during the summer than they make during the winter. For instance, some of our employees bike to work during the summer, but may choose to come with their car during the winter. So our approach has been to make as many options as available as possible, make sure people know what those options are, and still strive for more. I know the future is coming where we're going to hear more about connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles. We had hoped for the Regional Transit Authority to come through, because then bus rapid transit and a train to Detroit. These are all tools in a toolbox to help our community become more prosperous and continue our quality of life, but not always with a car.
Right. Now, you mentioned another aspect of the DDA is looking at housing and the people who live in the downtown. And one of the, you might say, complaints, or one of the questions that often comes up is that it's almost like a barbell. You have housing for students and some of the newer apartments and high rises, whatever high rise means, is focused for students. And then you have in the downtown the upper level income for retirement people who can afford a multi-expensive, let's say, housing, but not a lot of, you say, the middle or even lower income housing availability, especially for those who might work in the downtown.
Absolutely.
What can the DDA or the city do to encourage that type of housing development?
Well, the DDA has been very concerned about the diversity of housing, that the diversity of people is our strength downtown. That's one of the reasons our downtown is so interesting. The DDA has provided grants to projects that have brought with them housing that's affordable to people that work. What we're talking about these days is workforce housing, which is affordable, let's say 60% of AMI, which is about $35,000, or 80% of AMI, which is about $45,000. This is someone who's working downtown, earning a good paycheck, but can't afford, as you say, the either end of that barbell. In front of the city, one of the controversies ahead of our city council is decisions around whether to sell property atop the underground garage. A large amount of that housing, 10%, is directed to people at that 60 to 80% AMI. It's a big decision, but there would be 30 to 40 apartments that would be available to many people who would otherwise not be able to afford to live downtown.
Is the DDA involved at all with the discussion of the library lot, or is that purely city council and you would be involved in sort of promoting whatever they decide?
We've taken the latter approach. The DDA board approved a resolution of involving ourselves on the one element that really is in our purview, which is the parking. Right. And in essence saying, whatever the city decides, we will back you up and we'll be able to implement the parking agreement as we understand it. the challenge in front of City Council are a lot of moving pieces, and so to weigh in and complicate it is definitely not the DDA's goal. We want to be there to support our council in whatever decision they make.
And that's one of the critical, you could say, aspects is the relationship and role that the DDA has with the city, because you are an entity, or you're a you could say a sub of the city, that the council and the mayor appoint members to the DDA, right. And then the DDA goes and operates sort of their thing, but as you say, the goals are approved by council?
Our plan was approved by council, the board members are approved by council, the budget's approved by council, and we're working within the city right-of-way. So often we're building garages that will become city property. So we strive to be in step with our council and the goals and the values and the vision that they've given us as our leaders. We strive to be in step with them.
Well, we're going to take a short break, come back and look at some of the specific things over the next 6 to 12 months that the DDA is focused on, and ask our viewers to stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
I'm Dana Denta, host of FYI, and you can tune in Monday through Friday at 10, 6, and 10, only on CTN.
Did you know that CTN welcomes the members of the Ann Arbor City Council to Ward Talk? On the third Wednesday of every month, a different representative from one of the city's 5 wards joins us in the studio to discuss matters important to the people and government of Ann Arbor. Submit your questions for the next episode of Ward Talk by emailing ctn@a2gov.org or visiting our Twitter page at CTN Ann Arbor.
CTN Sports, bringing local sports to you.
Hello, and welcome back to Conversations. I'm speaking today with Susan Pollay, the Executive Director for the Downtown Development Authority, and wanted to make sure we're clear on sort of, you say that the City Council and the Mayor has ultimately control of what decisions are made with respect to the downtown, whether it be the parking or with the use of the space above the library parking lot and that. What or how does the DDA then operate? How do you get money? How do you do the things that you do?
So the DDA, through the state enabling language, has the opportunity to collect a tax increment financing capture, TIF. These are dollars generated from new construction that otherwise would go to other taxing authorities. We get a portion of that. And that comes to the DDA. With that, we purchase new street lights, install new trees, pay for alley repairs and sidewalks, the parking garages. In the early 90s, the DDA took over the public parking system. That is another source of revenues for the DDA. Many of the dollars from the system are used just to operate it and pay the debt service, but we're also occasionally, as we are now, talking about adding new parking. And the city receives 20% of the parking revenues from the parking system.
Now, you mentioned the tax increment financing, and to make it clear, you being the DDA do not collect tax dollars on either buildings or those things that were in the downtown before this whole thing got started.
That's
it's
right.
only on new construction.
That's right.
Is it on refurbished, or a business leaves and a new business comes in and expands the structure? Would that be included then?
There might be some small portion of personal property, but the best way to think of it is when a building is expanded and you get more floors,
Okay.
new real estate, new square footage, that's where the DDA capture is most visible. If a building installs new windows or a new tenant moves in, that's really not an improvement. It's just swapping out one for the other.
Right.
Our goal is the private sector saying, this is the place I want to invest. This is where I see an opportunity. And by doing the work we do in the right-of-way, as I said, repairing alleys and sidewalks, building the parking, we're encouraging them to put their dollars in Ann Arbor.
Right.
And we'd like to think that they are then going to grow their businesses and grow the number of people, number of jobs, and so forth.
And in certain ways, the idea being based on what the DDA is able to accomplish, new businesses will see that, come in and invest. And because of what you have done, new tax dollars will come in.
That's right.
And then you capture a portion of that. And that's the other thing to be clear. You're not getting all the tax dollars
Not at all.
of the new construction. So it's not like you're getting, you might say, everything in the city and the schools and the Washington Intermediate School District and WCC and all the other different increments that go in different ways, still are getting part, but not possibly the 100% of what they would get.
Exactly. And downtown, though we're seeing a lot of development, most of it is undevelopable. Most of it is either historic district or maybe University of Michigan campus or maybe floodway or floodplain. Much of that is not going to see new development, and yet the tax base is raising up because properties near other properties are gaining in value. Those are opportunities for our taxing authorities to gain new revenues. The DDA's capture does not include inflationary increases, so as buildings gain in value. The DDA portion is just a portion, and part of our metric is to see that the taxing authorities, the county, the city, the library, the community college, are also gaining in tax revenues, because of course they're providing very important services for our community.
So in one aspect is that if the city's downtown improves and value goes up, it helps everyone.
That's
and
absolutely.
it's not that we're going to sort of take away from others. It's everyone improving as a result of what the DDA is able to accomplish.
That's the goal. We want to see everyone benefiting.
Looking at the next 6 to 12 months, what specifically 2017-18 is the DDA looking at trying to accomplish?
Well, we have a few irons in the fire. One we're just finishing at 4th and William, one of the older garages. We've added 2 new high-speed elevators and a new stairwell, and we're waiting for warm weather just to finish. In about a month, as soon as commencement is taking place at the U of M, we will be on the South University sidewalks. We'll be expanding them. We'll be adding more areas for trees and seating. That project will take place all summer.
How do you expand them? Are we eliminating parking on the street?
No, we're
Okay.
keeping the parking, but what we're doing is in some way narrowing the lanes of traffic. As you know, when you're up there, you're moving fairly slowly anyway. So those were over wide lanes. You don't need that quite that wide. So we're going to cheat a little bit on the lanes of traffic and gain it for sidewalk. And that'll be absolutely beautiful by the time we're done. And we're underway.
Will that be done, you could say, completed by the end of the summer? Is that
It
the
should
goal?
be,
Okay.
even allowing for the break during art fair.
Right, yes.
Even allowing for that. We're also underway with a project where we're partnering with the city at the farmers market.
Okay.
And
Looking back to Southview, you just mentioned something. How will it impact the art fair if there's less street space because you're expanding the sidewalk? Will it sort of push in the booths a little bit?
allowing for the fire lane and the
Okay.
booths. We still have enough. We still have
Okay.
enough. We've gained back, and we're talking about inches here.
Oh, I know,
We're
yeah.
gaining back maybe 1.5 feet from the sidewalks.
Okay.
For the sidewalks. We'll still
It
be able
may
to do it.
help the people of us who are walking on the sidewalk during the crowded
Absolutely.
time, as far as having a little bit more space on that.
And it may help us gain space for our businesses. They'll
Yeah,
have a little bit
right.
more display area out on the sidewalk,
Right.
cafe tables out there.
And at Carytown, what is the plan?
Partnering with the city on a road reconstruction on Fifth Avenue, that beautiful historic brick.
Yeah. Keeping brick, though?
Keeping the brick.
Okay.
So what will happen is all of it will be removed. The city will do utility improvements, and then we'll put back the roadway. When we do that, we're going to add the brick back on top, but we're going to be modifying slightly the sidewalks, gaining where we can, because there's a one-way street,
Right.
gaining where we can more sidewalk space for activities and for people.
There was back, I want to say in the fall, a 1 or 2 week period where they blocked off a lane. Will Fifth become narrower and have only one lane of traffic, or will there be maintaining the 2 lanes? But once again, for the most part, you're not going very fast through there.
You're not going very fast, but yes, it was a modeling to try to understand what
Right.
we could do in that area. It's a high school area,
Right.
and so we need to be thinking about ways to make sure it's safe for people to cross the street. So we've resolved back that we're going to stay with 2 lanes of traffic, but there'll be a narrow median between the 2 lanes right where Fifth and Detroit come together,
Yes.
as a way to mimic a 1-lane street. What's nice about 1 lane is that when you're crossing, you only have to catch the eye of one car,
Right.
one car driver. With 2 lanes, sometimes the second one doesn't see you.
Especially
And-
right there where you also have parking on both sides.
Right.
So you can have 1 lane slowing down or stopping as someone's coming out of a parking spot, but then you have right at Carytown and sort of people crossing it, not necessarily at the crosswalks either.
Not always. And
Yeah.
so this median is intended to help the pedestrian travel safely across the second lane
Right.
as well. The crosswalks will be much more clearly demarcated, and we'll make sure that as we plan our landscaping and so forth, it's absolutely to emphasize where we really suggest it might be safer to cross.
And that's planned to be done this summer also?
The design will be done this summer,
Okay.
and we hope to be out to bid this fall and under construction this coming year.
A year from
It's
now,
a
so
very
to speak.
exciting project. That
Yeah.
historic brick has been something that we've heard about from just everyone. It's such a
Right.
treasure, and it really is the character of that neighborhood exemplified through that brick.
Right.
So we'll be sure that that brick is restored.
So you have those 2 specific areas that you combine both the traffic, the road, but also sidewalk and pedestrian movement. Lighting, is anything being done in different areas? And what are we looking for there, or are things pretty much resolved, so to speak, right now as far as the lighting of the pedestrian areas in that whole region?
Well, in the South University area, we'll be improving those lights. The poles will stay, but the lights will improve. We'll get better lighting. Right now, it's very uneven. There are hot spots and then dark
Right.
spots. That'll smooth out. It'll be a warmer tone. It'll be easier to see at night, which is important because that's a very active
Yes.
nighttime district. And in the Carytown neighborhood, we'll be adding lights. We'll be rearranging
Yeah.
where they're located, certainly in concert with all the other improvements.
And that's an area that is growing, I would say, as far as nighttime usage.
Oh, yeah.
Where for the 80s and 90s, when the farmers market wasn't operating and Carytown shops shut down at 6 or 7, you didn't have a lot of nighttime. But now with the various shops and the bars and restaurants that are in that region now, I would think the pedestrian traffic has grown.
Very much so, as the number of residents, the old Greek church and so forth.
Yes.
There's just so many now more residents living there and active at night. So have to be thinking nighttime, not just daytime, and how to make things feel comfortable, safe, and attractive.
Right. Looking longer range, any studies, and because at times we've talked about parking studies that go over a year or 2, or residential and that. Any long range plans the DDA is working on right now?
Well, we're examining the question that we began with, which is it time to add parking? We commissioned a study a year ago, saw when the demand is happening, where it's happening. We got recommendations on how to tamp some of that demand down, for instance, raising rates and so forth. But that's a question that we're going to have to really dig into and understand, because where we are today, we've gained 3.4 million square feet and only gained 1,000 parking spaces. So where are we?
When
Are
you
we
say
right
3
size?
point, whatever square feet of what, business space? Of
Residential,
living? Okay.
mixed-use real estate downtown. And it's a piece of a puzzle, though we strive to be multimodal. We have to be realistic about being in a region where the car, unfortunately, is the only way to get to and from many places. So there'll be a discussion this summer with the DDA resolving to look at that question. I think we will always continue to have questions about where are we going with residences downtown. We strive to be, as I said, a very diverse community, and yet, as you pointed out, too many people cannot afford to live in their own downtown. And so I think that's going to continue to be a discussion point. How do we become the kind of community we think we should be? And that question is not answered.
A year or two ago, there was, maybe it's longer ago than that, the whole bicycle rental, you say, the short-term use of a bicycle throughout the downtown and university area. Is that still an option, or how can we encourage non-vehicle uses of transportation?
That's a great question. Bike share has been around now, I think it's in its third year.
Third year.
The sign of spring is not just the robins coming
Okay.
back, but we saw the bikes go to the bike stations. We
Okay.
actually saw the bikes out on the sidewalk about a week
So
ago.
they're not out there really much or at all during the winter?
That's right.
Okay.
They're stored, and now that the weather's broken, we're going to start seeing them out and
Seeing them,
about.
right.
We're a town that loves our bikes. We use them, and I'm very excited to see that back again.
Any discussion still about some type of whether it's a AAA or someone providing sort of a circular bus transportation between the, Main Street, Liberty, State Street, Southview, that whole region? Over the years, the purple,
Remember the link?
Yeah, the link.
Yeah.
Didn't seem to actually, once again, it depends on people being willing not to have their vehicle readily accessible to them.
Well, you're asking another great question. In fact, the DDA has commissioned a study. We hope to have the findings in the next couple months, whether it's feasible to have a circulator back again. There is a circulator. I don't know if you come downtown to Art Fair, but during Art Fair,
yes.
there is a circulator that takes you around to the various parking facilities, and it gets you around the whole of the fair. The question is, in the era of Uber and Lyft, is there enough ridership? Does it warrant the investment to have this year-round sort of circulating downtown? So we're underway with a study.
Well, we won't get into the Packard
We'll
Beach
find out.
bypass of shutting down auto or vehicle transportation along Main Street or along State or whatever, because that's what happens with the Art Fair. I mean, the link is feasible because you can't take your vehicle.
That's right.
through
You
that
have
region.
to.
Yeah.
But we're very walkable downtown, and when the weather's beautiful, many of us choose to walk.
Right.
It's when it's really ugly and icy, and it's like, boy, wouldn't it be great to get to Southview if this took me up there?
Yeah.
So the study's asking that question in an era of Uber and Lyft. Is there the kind of ridership that warrants the investment? Because it's got to have an economic development benefit to that neighborhood. If you're going to spend that kind of dollar, it's got to help that neighborhood.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's always a pleasure to have you back here.
Well, thank you.
And I thank our viewers for joining us today and look forward to your continued support here on Conversations.